Hello, everyone. My name is Zena Harris, and I'm the president of GreenSpark Group and the creative director of the Sustainable Production Forum. And I would like to welcome you to the second panel of the 2020 Sustainable Production Forum presented by SIM. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. At GreenSpark Group, we are focused on changing the climate of entertainment, and we work with stakeholders that share this same vision. This means working across the motion picture industry with productions, media companies, and industry organizations to consistently integrate sustainable practices on their shows and in their operations. The SPF and these webinars are our way of gathering thought leaders and experts to share knowledge and inspire a culture of change. I would like to take a moment to run through some introductions and Zoom features we have available. The chat box will be left open for general discussion among attendees and panelists throughout the panel discussion. This is where we will post any links and contact information mentioned during the event. The Q&A box will be monitored throughout the event, so please direct your questions for panelists in that space. You are also able to upvote questions, and the moderator will prioritize those that are of interest to many attendees. Finally, the recording of the event will be shared with you after the event. Before we begin, I'd like to give a big thanks to our presenting sponsor of the 2020 Sustainable Production Forum, SIM. And thank you to our Sustainable Production Worldwide panel sponsor, Vancouver Film Studios. Here to provide some remarks is Natasha Dixon from Vancouver Film Studios.
Thanks, Zena. Hello, I'm Natasha Dixon from the Vancouver Film Studios. I would like to start off by acknowledging that Vancouver Film Studios is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Vancouver Film Studios is proud to sponsor the Sustainable Production Forum, and we commend the organizers for pushing forward during these unprecedented times. For the next 90 minutes, you will be listening to some amazing speakers from around the globe, all coming together under one mission, which is sustainable entertainment. In the spirit of Ferris Bueller, the question isn't, what are we going to do? The question is, what aren't we going to do? And with that, I would like to pass it back over to Zena.
Thank you, Natasha. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Laura Lynch, our moderator for today. Laura Lynch is an award-winning journalist and host of a new CBC network radio program on climate change called What on Earth? In the course of her career, she has reported from across Canada and around the world. Internationally, Laura was based in Washington, D.C. during and after the attacks of September 11th, 2001. Laura also reported from Pakistan, where Benazir Bhutto was attacked and then assassinated, from Israel during the war with Lebanon and its ongoing dispute with the Palestinians, from Saudi Arabia, where she was detained, from Syria as the country descended into civil war, and from Africa, where she reported undercover from Zimbabwe when Western journalists were barred. Please welcome Laura Lynch.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I'm excited about this discussion and honored to be your moderator. And we do have an excellent lineup of panelists. We'll get started in just a sec. So welcome everyone to the Sustainable Production Worldwide panel. As noted, I am hosting a new program on CBC Radio called What on Earth. Tune in if you like on Sunday mornings at 12:30. Here's my plug, or our podcast anytime. It is a labor of love. We have a very small team, but I am so enjoying digging into all of the topics around climate change. And every time I think I've heard of everything, up comes something new, like this initiative, like what you are trying to do in your own industry. So I'm going to be just as interested in this discussion as everyone else. So I want to tell you a little bit about the panel. It's going to explore how organizations, crews, and filmmakers are mobilizing around the world for a single purpose to make motion picture production more sustainable. Now, your panelists are Veronika Grosse, production designer, Filmmakers for the Future; Anna Valdez Hanks, director of photography, Cut It. And I don't have pronunciations here, so I'm doing my best with the names. Liesel Hutting, managing director, WrapZero; Samuel Rubin, chief of impact and Yay co-founder, Yay Impact; Lisa Merrick-Lawless, the co-founder of Purpose Disruptors; Rosa Canela Mas, industry sustainability manager with the British Academy of Film and Television Arts; and Mike Slavich, director of sustainability, WarnerMedia. Now, you can see we have a large panel here. So and to ensure that we're going to have enough time for discussion afterwards, I feel like I'm a moderator at a presidential debate, but I know you're not going to talk over each other. Each panelist will have a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and what they're currently working on, and then we're going to open it up for discussion and questions from the audience. First up is Veronika Grosse. Welcome, Veronika.
Hello, I'm Veronika Grosse, and I join you from Berlin. I'm here for Filmmakers for Future, and Filmmakers for Future was started by Paul Vincent Roll and Wolfgang Wollmann, who wrote a statement, which now more and more people, filmmakers and people from the industry are signing. Our starting aim is to create awareness and to encourage conversations and exchange of ideas. And of course, our final goal is to help minimize the environmental impact of the global film industry. Our first, as a group, we're still very much at the start. So that's why we are very, very thankful to be invited to this very experienced panel. Our first project has been what we call the Green Production Map. It's a virtual map that everyone who joins can add to. It contains businesses and events and services that have a green agenda. And we hope that in the future it can become a useful tool to green productions. And the second thing that we started doing during the summer is that we went into youth film camps that exist here in Germany, and we worked with the teenagers in sessions to introduce them right from the start to green production techniques, as it's very important to, and much easier if you start straight with right techniques from the start. And we hope that that has been very encouraging, and we hope that we now we are reaching out to the unions to find a way how we can encourage our colleagues, because as we are all working in the industry, we feel that there's a lot of theory already in, but the practical side of the film industry is still very much not green and doesn't go further than vegan or vegetarian options at the catering and some reusable cups. So yeah, our main problem as a group is still that we need more active members. So I want to use this opportunity to reach out and say we would love everyone to join into and be part of our working groups and help define steps towards a greener film industry. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up is Anna Valdez Hanks. And I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly. Oh, you're still muted, Anna. There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a director of photography, and I'm one of the co-founders of Cut It, which began right at the beginning of this year and more or less flourished under lockdown when so many crew out of work, because Cut It is a collective of film crew, everyone from heads of departments down to trainees who care about the environment and care about our industry. So we've come together in a non-hierarchical organization which functions so that the individuals within the organization can take whatever initiatives they want, consult with the other members, and then move forward with ideas they may have. So we sort of saw ourselves as like effectively a union for the environment. we wanted to work in a way which other kind of more established environmental bodies in the UK film and television are doing currently. So we didn't want to replicate what they were doing. We wanted to find a different way of working so that we could sort of synchronize and sort of push in different ways. So we're very much pushing from the bottom up. So collectivizing and asking for change and finding routes for that change. So some of the initiatives we have at the moment are a green agreement which we've formed, which we have taken to the Producers Alliance and also to the union, and had a very positive response. So we would like that ultimately to be put into as many contracts as we can. That would make quite a big change within our industry. Also, we're encouraging studios to go green, and a number of different things like training, and also, but the big thing is really cultural change. That there's people that want change but are very busy. Film crew are very busy, so we need to sort of encourage people to give more space in their minds to this subject. So we're doing a lot of social media to try and encourage people to think more about the environment and how it intersects with their working lives.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. Next up is Liesel Hutting. Welcome, Liesel. Did I get that anywhere near right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
So WrapZero is a sustainability consultancy. We've been practitioners and consultants for many years, and for the past 3.5 years have focused very much on the film industry. And our strength really is closing the gaps between policy and practice and people. And here I just wanted to run through a few highlights of what's actually happening in South Africa, and then also how our work contributes to the shift towards sustainable production. So starting with practice, some recent work has includes Raised by Wolves Season 1, which is just streamed, and The Watch, which is due to screen in January. And both had very comprehensive sustainability implementations. And when we work on a production, tools are of course vital, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, or you can't improve it. And we're very happy to work with any tools because we know there's different ones around the world. But practice has also shown us that context and location are really important variables. And so we encourage more detailed reports. And I want to just highlight some examples here that we feel are also very relevant to other regions. For example, water, polyurethane, and the way donations are coordinated. And I'm very happy to expand on this during the discussion. When we then go to people, training is a very important part of what we do. And as part of the legacy of Raised by Wolves Season 1, we co-developed course materials for the role of a sustainability PA along with GreenSet. And they also continue to supply interns to projects that we work on. And then we've also seen that how the proof of a production's results are really only as good as the data. And that is only as good as the implementation. And that is only as good as your training and your setup and your ongoing support and your communication. So it really is a virtuous circle. And if a production is serious about sustainability, then we definitely recommend having a dedicated sustainability PA with appropriate support in place. Then in terms of policy, definitely want to single out Film Africa. It's a local service production company. They include a green fringe on all their productions, and that allows for full sustainability implementation. And then on a regional level, the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, they are the only film region in Africa to develop guidelines for sustainable production. And these are currently being translated into Zulu, the vernacular, to make it even more accessible, which we think is very important as well. And then at a global level, we are launch signatories of the Creative Industries Pact for Sustainable Action. And we're really encouraged to see that more people has joined this, or more organizations have joined this over the last year or so. And it also includes a number from our region. And we really feel we need to all come together for real impact.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Liesel. Next up is Samuel Rubin. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Laura, and everyone for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here as a representative of a youth-led Hollywood-based organization. Last May, we organized the first ever Hollywood Climate Summit that was youth-led, and we had to do it virtual, which was much better for the green bottom line of the event, I have to say. But truly our goal now is twofold, and it focuses first on something that I think a lot of young people face when they start in the industry and they don't know where to begin in their sustainability efforts, is that we all have superpowers, no matter what our role in the industry is and at what stage we are at. Sometimes we work on an office in development, in pre-production, like in the case of many agencies and production companies in Los Angeles, and then we fly away and go and do production somewhere else, and then the post-production happens in another country. And so these kind of events are very important because they reflect the international nature of our industry. But I also want to bring up the intergenerational nature of our industry, and most importantly, the intergenerational nature of the climate movement. We are now working in a year-long initiative called Climate Ambassadors, which focus mostly on young entry-level professional members to bring together knowledge within companies and incentivize intergenerational dialogue with their executive counterparts, with their superiors, with their bosses, because quite oftentimes assistants and coordinators are the ones that have to be enforcing those sustainability measures in place. What, beyond, no? I agree, beyond the caps and the catering and all of those basic one-on-one things that we can all do. And another example of intergenerational work that we're doing now is with our impact consultant agency, with the Can You Hear Us campaign, which is accompanying the release of the I Am Greta documentary on Hulu. And if it's a privilege to be working on a documentary that another time emphasizes that intergenerational conversations matter a lot in the space of climate. And I look forward to studios and big production companies and enterprises into using that as an opportunity to welcome new, younger industry members who will have to deal with the consequences and the stake of the future of the planet.
Okay, Samuel, thank you very much. That's a really important point you make. It's certainly something that we contend with on the program, is making sure that we listen to and hear from the younger generation's voice for exactly the reasons that you point out. So next up is Lisa Merrick-Lawless.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Lisa. So I'm based in London. I'm one of the co-founders of a network organisation called Purpose Disruptors. We're based in London, but have members in LA, Mumbai, Amsterdam, Paris, Dublin, and kind of growing every time we run an event. We're a network of people who work kind of inside advertising, who are trying to reshape the industry from the inside. So we're slightly kind of still entertainment, but kind of advertising, commercial communications rather than pure film, I'm going to call it. And I guess our vision is one where the communications industry only promotes kind of lifestyles, behaviours, brands that are consummate with a 1.5 degree world. So that's a pretty big ask from inside the advertising industry that drives consumption. So quite similar to sort of Anna, we work as a community-based organisation, building a sort of large-scale kind of movement from the inside. So we've now got about 1,300 members in the community. We started 18 months ago, meeting upstairs in a pub in London, and a handful of people kind of getting together. We had a question, I guess, which is, if I work in advertising and I'm really good at my job, then I drive consumption, but kind of 60% of greenhouse gases are caused by household consumption. So like, what do I do about that? That attracted kind of lots more people who came along to the pub, and it went from a handful of us to kind of 60 quite quickly. And then in June 2019, XR wrote a letter in Campaign magazine, which is a big trade magazine in the UK for advertising, saying, advertising industry, don't think we've forgotten about you. And we thought that kind of required a response. So we held the industry's first kind of climate crisis summit, got 100 people kind of in a room, very senior people from within the industry, and kind of, did an education piece about kind of climate facts, and then, ran some action studios to work out what we might do about it. So We, from there, kind of ran something called Create and Strike, which supported the students who went out on strike in September. Got 160 CEOs to sign a letter and let people go out on strike from agencies that have people like Shell as a client. So that was quite interesting, creating that amount of tension in the system. And I guess it's what I'm saying, sort of systems change is what we're kind of really interested in. And our most recent initiative that we're currently working on is called The Great Reset. I'll share a link in the chat afterwards. And we launched that back in July with a kind of launch film as a rallying cry to the industry for creative people to use their power and influence in the kind of climate emergency. Off the back of that, we wrote a white paper, and then we ran a creative competition that was judged by the D&AD. And just picking up on what Samuel was saying, it was judged by the New Blood Academy. So we wanted the people who've got the most future ahead of them to kind of judge what they saw as great creative work. So we had 160 people enter, and we ended up making 7 campaigns, which kind of went live simultaneously and are currently live in the UK. So thank you for having me. Very interested in learning what everyone else is doing.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And next is, I'm sure I'm saying this wrong, Rosa Canela Mas. How did I do?
No worries. Hi. No, you're fine. It's Rosé, like the wine.
Okay, okay.
People remember that. Thank you for having me here. A pleasure to share the space with all the panelists. I'm just super impressed, and I just want to ask so many questions to them actually after all the presentations. So yes, you said my name is Rosa Canela Mas. I'm the Industry Sustainability Manager and International Manager for Albert, which is a project that is chaired by BAFTA in the UK. I've been on that role for the last 4 years. Albert, for who doesn't know, it is a non-profit industry-backed project bringing the screen industries together to tackle the environmental impact of production, but also to inspire sustainable living. The BAFTA Albert Consortium, which is the group of our funders, started 10 years ago. So everything started with the BBC over 10 years ago, that they created the carbon calculator. And then they wanted to share it with the whole industry, but because it's a public channel, they couldn't do it. So they gave it to BAFTA because it's a non-profit organization as well. And this consortium is backed by the main broadcasters and production companies in the UK. We run several tools and schemes in order to help the industry to completely eliminate their carbon footprint, but also, as I mentioned, to inspire audiences. Some of our tools and schemes are, I think, one of the most famous tool probably is the carbon calculator, which just last year alone, we calculated 1,300 footprints. And we have partners with different countries as well. And I know some of you here as well. I still need to talk to you to try to go together further. But our calculator is active in several countries. One of them is Canada through Real Green. We also have the Albert Sustainable Production Certification, which is a list of actions that helps productions to reduce their carbon footprint and eventually eliminate it. We also have our international partnership that I mentioned, just like that we partner with several countries. We have partnerships with organizations in Norway, Canada, Ireland, the Emirates, the Netherlands, and now we just, at the beginning of this year, we did a partnership with Fremantle Global, which is has production companies in 19 countries, which that actually is helping us a lot to build our new global tool. So now we're building a new global calculator in order to help the industry elsewhere as well. This tool is going to be live early 2021. We have projects on renewable energy as well. So we created the project called Creative Energy, where we help production companies, studios, and post-production houses to all source renewable energy together, which that brings the price down. And at the same time, it kind of like takes the worry of them having to research. So we kind of facilitate that for them. And we also have, we launched this year, I think it was, 2020 is like it didn't exist sometimes, the Green Rider campaign, which was a guide for actors, writers, and directors in order to guide them how to ask for contracts with sustainable measures on set, which kind of Anna kind of talked to this about the crew. which is really interesting. And our latest report called Green New Deal, which I invite you all to read, is 60 pages, but you can read it in a few days, which highlights 5 key areas of opportunity to help the film industry achieve the goal of eliminating their carbon footprint. And these areas are production materials, energy and water, studio buildings and facilities, studio sites and locations, and production planning.
A lot in there. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rose. And our final panelist is Mike Slavich. Mike, welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to be back at the Sustainable Production Forum and to be part of this amazing panel, this international and intergenerational panel, as Samuel said. It's just amazing. You know, I've been working in this field for 15 years at WarnerMedia, integrating sustainability into our business and culture. And today I'm representing WarnerMedia, but also the Sustainable Production Alliance and our work with the Green Production Guide. You know, 10 years ago or more, when the studios started working in sustainability, we were all kind of working independently. But we quickly realized that we needed to collaborate and work together as an industry. You know, although we're competitors, we share the same crews, we work at the same facilities, and we use the same suppliers. So we understood that we needed to collaborate in order to create systemic change. We also needed to create a common language and resources that our crews could use as they were kind of going from project to project, so that there was less of a learning curve. We partnered with the Producers Guild of America, and we created the Green Production Guide as a free industry resource. Today, the original alliance has grown to 12 companies, and the Green Production Guide includes all the materials that we've been collaborating to produce over the years that we provide freely for anyone to use. Some of the resources include pre-production planning tools. Planning is critical to a successful implementation on a production. And we also have some wrap reports as well. These materials we affectionately refer to as peach, pear, and plum. There's also additional resources, fact sheets for products and services, new kind of emerging technologies and resources like renewable diesel, vendor recommendations, and so on. And also communication tools. You know, we realize that working on a production, it's not just one person's role to help move the production to a more sustainable practice. It's really everyone on the production has a role to play. So it's really important that we're communicating to the crews with memos and signage and really embedding it in the culture of our productions. Also, a recent addition to the site is a video series called SEEDS, which stands for Sustainable Environment Education Series. And the most recent video was in partnership with the MPA, and it also focused on film students and film schools. So I think that, you know, the materials that we're creating, you know, we're using them ourselves, we're making them available to the industry, and we really want to encourage, you know, students that are just learning their trade to build these skills. You know, intergenerational sharing is important, and I couldn't agree with that more. And hopefully when these students are ready to come to the workforce and join our productions, maybe they can teach us a thing or two as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you to all of you for, there's a lot to get through there and a lot to talk about. I just, the confession, I've never moderated a discussion on Zoom before. Sorry? Oh, sorry, someone outside the door. See, so things like this happen. I'm going to do my best with this. I just want to say that so far I don't see any questions in the Q&A box. So anyone who's watching in and wants me to ask a question of the panelists, please get that Q&A populated with some questions. I do have questions here to ask all of you, and I'm going to put some of them to you generally and then some more specifically. I think I'll start with a more general one, and I guess whoever wants to answer, do what we would do in person, which is put up your hand in front of the camera, and it will try and call on you. So let's start with this. What do you think is the biggest barrier to making film, TV, media, and advertising more sustainable? Who wants to tackle that first? Some brave soul's got to do that. Okay, Anand, why don't you tackle that?
I think the biggest challenge is the unregulated nature of our industry. It's interesting, for example, in the UK, the most regulated part of our industry is television, because we have, you know, the BBC, and the other channels also have some measure of regulation via the government. And it's in these areas that we've seen the biggest change and the biggest participation with Albert, as Rosa will know. Whereas the feature film industry in our country is completely unregulated, and we've only had one feature film undertake Albert certification. We have no data on the feature films that are produced here. So I think the lack of regulation means that we're relying a lot on things like cultural change, goodwill, self-initiative to make actual change happen.
And Anna, does that mean that you've lobbied government to regulate this and government has said no?
We have asked the BFI if they would look at, we like many countries, we give tax breaks to feature films and high-end dramas that film in our country. And we've asked the BFI if they could make a requirement of the certification, a requirement of the tax break that that these productions are required to be Albert certified and also to fill in their carbon footprint. So we at least have some idea of what carbon emissions are happening in this sector. And the BFI have so far said no. So we're now moving into a lobbying position with the British film industry to do so, yeah.
Okay, Rosa, I see you wanting to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to back up a little bit what Anna said, it's true that so Albert will be more successful with the TV industry probably because it's more independent, I would say, and broadcasters have chosen to make it compulsory to measure. So I think for me, I recognize two barriers. That one is acceptance, and it links a little bit with like on the film side, maybe no measuring because maybe, I don't know, maybe we're scared, maybe we don't want to know, because we see that with big shows and TV shows, like the main big shows, some of them, they're more resistant to measure because they're kind of like scared about recognizing that they have a big impact. And another thing is more the involvement of senior management, because it's so important that crews, we've been working with crews for a long time with the production teams, but at the end of the day, there is a limit. There is one point that they won't be able to be part of the big decision making. And I think it's really important that the senior management is involved and yeah.
Okay. Liesel, over to you.
Yes, I think there's definitely a role for the carrot as well. And if I think of the Trentino film region in Italy, I think it's the only film commission in the world that actually has a financial incentive to go green. That's hugely valuable.
Okay. All right, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think a lot of productions have been voluntarily doing this work for many, many years, and, you know, not just implementing more sustainable practices, but measuring it. And I do think that some incentives would be great. I know Germany has an incentive for their tax credit that gives some incentive for productions to show what it is that they're doing. I think some other challenges are just sort of the transient nature of our industry, the different crews, just the education that we need to continually reinforce with different people, and the diversity of our supply chain. You know, when we have a studio, we have a little bit more control over the facility, and we're investing in the infrastructure. You know, Warner Brothers in Burbank, over 50% of our inventory for set lighting is now LED. And as a result, we've saved, 16 to 18% overall in our electricity usage over the past 5 or 6 years. So we're able to make those investments. But when we're filming in other locations, we're reliant on other sort of suppliers and partners. So we want to influence them to invest themselves so that they can help us be more sustainable in our practices. So, I do think that that the implementation and the measurement is absolutely important. I couldn't agree with that more. It is being done, but there's more that can be done, certainly.
And Mike, how are you doing at influencing when you go to other locations?
Well, we have guidelines that we provide to all of our productions, and so they can't do everything. They can't use an electric generator if there isn't any electric generator inventory in the areas where they work. Our sponsor today, Sim, in Vancouver, has some of that equipment. So when we have productions that are in areas that have that equipment, we encourage them to use it, and they are. So that's that's that.
Okay, does anyone else want to weigh in on this?
I would like to say that, you know, it's important to see this, as Mike was saying before, as a structural systemic issue that we have to, you know, change and tackle from a lot of different sides. And I think that when I bring up the idea of intergenerational work, it's because quite often I'm only 25. I happen to be very privileged in knowing a lot of the initiatives that executives and companies are working on, because I happen to be in certain meetings and this kind of environment. But the vast majority of the new workforce joining our entertainment industry isn't aware of this. And the Green Production Guide, it's still very much unknown to a lot of people, and so will be the Green New Deal, and it's an amazing resource. And I think that one of the challenges that collectively we have to put together a system in place where we see this as a win-win for everyone, to amplify and support each other's initiative, which they all can, you know, complement each other so easily, you know, quite oftentimes. And to see as well how we bring in these young professionals that will enforce the majority of these guidelines. And I think that it's very important. Look, we live in an entertainment industry. I was reading today about Quibi, which spent billions of dollars into a project that was a failure, okay? And it is what it is. It is what it is, because in the entertainment industry, that happens all the time. Movies flop. Blockbusters, they don't. And we cannot make an investment in sustainability. And that brings me to the next point. Sustainability isn't sexy, isn't attractive. And we are Hollywood. We are the entertainment industry, and we can make things shine and bright. And I think that we need to also consider the importance of climate storytelling as well in the equation, because if we continue to see in our TV shows and the program that we do, the climate nerd, and now that I'm working in the project, you know, with Greta, there is so many opinions about what it is to be a climate activist. Well, people are not going to join the boat. You know, they're going to be like, well, what I don't want to have to do with this. And we have to do an effort to make it more sexy and appealing, you know.
I hear you that sustainability isn't sexy, but I, from my point of view, producing and hosting this program, I will tell you that people are increasingly engaged in the topic, and I don't think it's a far reach to get more people involved. I just want to mention a couple of things. The chat box is getting filled up, which is great, with lots of comments and resources and that sort of thing. But I just want to remind you, if you actually have a question, to put it in the Q&A box, which I'm going to open right now. Let's see. Oh yeah, and people are giving their own thumbs up to what they would like answered. So let's see, try this. This is kind of a flip side of what I just asked. What is the one thing you would like to see happen or be achieved in terms of sustainable production in the near future, or what would you like to see more of in the creative industries to help climate change? Who wants to try that? Hands up. Lisa.
I'll start with a word, which is responsibility, I think. So I guess this is sort of linked to measurement, but in particular within advertising, I think there is a definite lack of people taking kind of full responsibility when it comes to kind of their impact on climate. So for example, you know, we're way behind other industries, even financial industries, and as a kind of creative industry, we're normally ahead of the curve on most things. But actually as an industry, we're behind. Leadership within the industry is behind. And I think what that means is the responsibility isn't kind of taken fully. So for instance, in advertising, it's passed on to the clients, you know, the agencies are just kind of, you know, passive recipients of briefs and just work on what they're told to work on, as opposed to being kind of change agents and kind of, you know, pushing for that. So I think responsibility would be my first word.
One. Okay, Liesl, go ahead, please.
I think also deep commitment to real proof of impact. science-based targets and reliable measurement of that, because I think there's a risk of there being a lot of hot air. So I think, again, learning from other industries, the implementation and the data collection, it's incredibly important if you want to show that you've made a real impact.
Okay. Rosa.
Yeah, I would like to say I completely agree about the numbers that we need to measure, and we've been measuring for years. So obviously I wouldn't be really stupid if I disagree with that. But I would like to see kind of like an attitude that we have to do it. So people to believe in climate change. I mean, we have the science. We have, I mean, it's everywhere. So why should we ignore it? And I feel like it's much more comfortable for our industry to just carry on doing what we were doing, because come on, like, if we change, and then, I mean, seeing Samuel here, like, is so inspiring, like saying, like, come on, we are the people we're going to be doing these jobs, and we need to be able to do these jobs, and unless we do something about it, we won't be doing films in a few years. So it's about believing, it's about, yeah, we need targets, we need financial incentives, but I want people to do it because they believe they have to do it, everybody, not because there is a financial incentive or a number, which obviously helps as well.
But Rosie, does that suggest then that there are more people in the industry who aren't on board than are on board?
No. I think people are on board, but I mean, it's not easy. I mean, you need to change completely the way how you work sometimes, and when you've been 30 years doing the same, or 20 or 10, doing the same way, someone coming and saying, okay, now you need to plan on a different way, and now on top of that you need to measure, and on top of that you need to put sustainability on every decision making. I mean, we have lots of problems, we have to manage lots of things, so it's about educating people and make it like helping people believe that we need to do that is something that it's just no option.
Okay, Veronika, I think I saw you with your hand up. You can unmute yourself, please, Veronika.
Sorry, here I am. Yeah, I agree with what Rosa is saying, but I also think that due to the kind of hierarchical structure of crews, that depending on the production is still quite steep. I think there is quite a big responsibility with the heads of department to create a kind of environment in their departments for people to speak up. And because I sometimes find as a filmmaker myself, or as a member of crew, that's not always a head of department, you have to watch your place and see where you stand, and it's up also to the heads of department to create an atmosphere where people feel like they can say they have a word or they have a voice.
Anna.
Yeah, I agree with all those points, absolutely. And this was slightly touched on, but one thing that we found we're very surprised about within ourselves and within other people who are very passionate about sustainability in our industry was a very low understanding of carbon literacy within our industry and where the real problems lie. Albert have been fantastic, and they've been running these carbon literacy trainings, and through kind of the coronavirus period they've been online, which has been great. Previously they've mainly been seen by production managers and people working in production, and crew wouldn't really watch them. But what you learn through Albert's carbon literacy is the big problem is travel is the #1 big problem, and power is a big problem. But things like, the water bottles on set and the single-use plastics that we're all completely obsessed with, that's a tiny problem in terms of the carbon output, a tiny problem, and it's a huge focus on everybody's minds is single-use plastics, and hardly any consideration given to travel. So I think it somehow education amongst the whole crew, including especially heads of departments who do need to lead on this and do themselves. We do have a low level of carbon literacy, so somehow implementing training that's going to bring everybody up to speed so they can at least put their efforts in the right places when they want to do so.
We should have then another forum with all the heads of department on, right? They can talk about all this. Mike, I think you had your hand up too.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see just continued investment in innovation. You know, we really need to accelerate technology to enable us to decarbonize and to electrify our productions. You know, fuel use is the biggest impact that we have in terms of our impact on climate. And something like the LED technology that has really become a standard was revolutionary. It really significantly reduced the amount of power that we were using on our stages. So, you know, these electric generator technologies that are just now emerging, that's just another example of the kind of clean tech that we need to be developing. And maybe also some more industry collaboration, you know, looking to other industries to see what they're doing for power on location and so on. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity, and I think conversations like this are just the beginning of that. And I've seen so much more interest and activity and discussion around sustainability with respect to production now than ever before, and it's just growing. So that's exciting, and I think that you know, it's a disruptive time in our industry, and so this is the perfect time to be making these systemic changes.
You're because of the pandemic you're referring to, obviously.
Yeah, that's part of it. We're having to change the way we're doing it.
Yeah, we now have 16 questions in the Q&A, but Liesl, your hand up was up before I said that, so briefly to you, and then we'll go to another.
Okay, I'll just pick up very briefly on innovation. I think that's a very important point as well, and it's something that we picked up on Raised by Wolves in terms of the polyurethane. I think it's a material that's very widely used in construction heavy productions, and it's been really flying under the radar with regards to the carbon footprint. And on Raised by Wolves, we determined that it's actually the third biggest emitter of the transport fuel and electricity, so bigger even than flights on an international production. So it's an incredibly useful material, and it does what it says on the tin, but at the moment there's no reuse for it yet. And it is really, I think, again, it comes back to buy-in at all levels and a real deep commitment if the industry is wanting to address this. It's an opportunity to reduce its use during design, which means, again, early involvement by the sustainability team and wide discussion. And then also for the whole industry to engage with suppliers regarding plant-based or biodegradable alternatives, and for the industry to help drive market change and innovation.
Okay, so we have a question here from, I might not pronounce this correctly, Maura Campler, who may or may not be a PA. How have you seen production crews, studios, or other parts of a set effectively support the sustainability PA? How can we integrate support so that all things sustainability don't just fall on the PA? Who would like to tackle that? Sam.
I would love to talk about that, because I think that's very much at the core of what we're trying to tackle with our coming program, Climate Ambassador, which is a question that we see a lot with young entry-level professionals. And I think that that's tied to what Veronika was saying with department heads and communication. You know, we don't question, when we do safety training in the industry, we don't question the validity of it. We just do them in a very bureaucratic, routine manner. And I feel like the same standard could be applied for every employee in the company, top down to bottom, to do a couple of efficient hours at understanding, okay, how do I make my presence in this set sustainable? You know, and that investment on behalf of companies will deliver the results and outcomes that they expect to see when they invest in this super fancy looking sustainability projects. And yes, I think that there is a belief that sustainability is already sexy, and that the majority of people maybe are already doing, not aware of the issue. But the question now is the majority of the people who are aware of the issue doing what we need to collectively do to fix the issue? And that's why we are also here debating to find more effective and tangible ways to do so. I think that there is very little conversation directly from the sustainability officer in the first place with the PA, face-to-face, one-to-one, to get to the bottom of how do we enforce all level of sustainability measures on set, and as well also in the pre-production office, where we are writing the contract of the actors, of the directors, and making all of those executive decisions.
Okay. Anyone want to respond to that, to what Samuel said, or the question itself? Veronika. Oh, I thought one.
No, I do want to talk. I do want to talk. It's not an answer to Samuel, but I want to pick up on something that was said earlier about of course, the development of new technology, which of course is important. But I also find that often the focus is always on the new, rather than sometimes to stop and evaluate and think what has been there that's good, that has been good already, rather than always push forward with everything that's new and glamorous. Like something that I'm missing on most sets is time. It gets faster and faster, and the less time you have on a production, the more you just hang on the back of the horse rather than actually being in control of your decisions. And that is, for my department, often in the production design, the bit where you make where you make decisions that are not very wise. And so yeah, I mean, all what has been talked about is important, but sometimes it's also, yeah, just time to slow down again and to rethink of the way we've been doing things, and things that might have been already also good in the past that have been lost.
Anyone else on this? Mike?
Yeah, I think Veronika raises a great point. I mean, these solutions that we need to start developing, they must be sustainable, but they will be adopted more quickly if they also help with the efficiency of their production. They help everyone make their jobs easier. So again, with the LED set lighting, it wasn't just more energy efficient, it was more dynamic. It allowed directors of photography to really kind of dial in the color temperature that they wanted and to control toggling back and forth between different setups, reduced the amount of equipment that the crews needed to bring in to set it up, kept the sets cooler so the air conditioning wasn't running. There were all kinds of other benefits to that. So, virtualization of the production office, digital distribution of documents, not having someone standing at the copying machine and then sending it out to deliver to someone and just emailing that off. That saves time, that saves resources, and it's also good for the environment. So it's these solutions that we need to look for that kind of serve multiple purposes. They're reducing the impact, they're making our shows more efficient, and ultimately they're helping us put a better product on the screen.
Okay, I just want to remind everyone who's watching, in the Q&A, you can also upvote a question if it's something that you really want to see answered, and it will pop up to the top of the queue, which gives it a better chance of being asked, such as the next one, which is from Dorte Schneider. Do you see an advantage? Oh, it just moved on me. Where'd you go, Dorte? It's come up here. Hang on. I think it was, do you see an advantage in having a
green consultant on set? I read it. So yeah.
There it is. Yes. And what role do you believe they need to play? Who wants to try that? Rose?
I think it's a little bit quite similar on the question that we just answered. This is having a person kind of like responsible, like, a consultant, no? They asked? Sorry.
Yeah.
A green consultant. I mean, if there is someone in the production, obviously consultant, if it's external to the production from Albert, we would always recommend that there's someone internal to at least that starts on the production at the same time. So it's not about just like bringing someone to help sorting the recycling. I think Veronika made a really good point of like, obviously, like maybe I don't have time to think about certain things. So yeah, I mean, from Albert, we have a quite different approach, but we completely share everybody's approach because we understand every production is completely different, but we believe it's important that sustainability lies on the team who's already in the production. So we always ask the production team to measure the carbon footprint. However, we also ask for them to invite the whole crew, so kind of like get the heads of department and say, okay, this is what we need to measure. What can you do? Just work together. But we've never had the approach of having a green consultant. I understand that also we've been working more with TV, so probably film for the type of production, and depends where you are, because I think Mike was saying really good points about the infrastructure, about having all this technology and innovation that actually can make your work much easier, much faster and much greener. So I think it depends. It really, really depends on the project, on the film or the program.
Liesel, just briefly, because now we have many questions, which is great.
I think what I really just want to say is that the most important tool on a production that wants to go green are the people, are the crew. The process of engaging them can be helped a lot by engaging a consultant or a sustainability PA, because it's someone who can actually just herd people and keep motivating them and keep, you know, it is everybody's job to practice sustainability, but it helps if there's someone who can just champion it all the time and just make sure that it doesn't get lost along the way.
Okay. Okay, so this next question is from Peter Cave, and it's about the money, which is always an important part of any decision being made in any business. And he asks, how might a typical producer incorporate sustainability initiatives into budgets and policies? Stated differently, and I'm hoping I'm going to state what he's written correctly, is there $1 per ton CO2, the type of criteria that they target now or in the future? Anyone? Budgets, money? Oh, Rosa, go ahead.
In terms of, I mean, I don't know if it exactly is going to answer the question, but for example, in terms of incentive, what we've got with Albert in the UK is that all the main broadcasters in the UK, they don't do the last payment to productions unless these productions calculate their carbon footprint. So obviously it's not an incentive because they don't give you more money, but it does take that into account. In terms of budgeting, we're starting to look at offsetting from next year. So from next year, because we had quite a long way on reducing and using the Albert certification, we're gonna ask UK productions to offset the remaining of the carbon footprint. And that's something that, again, like productions are start to budget it from the beginning, how much it's gonna cost them offsetting. What they do is they're gonna do a predicted footprint, so then they can budget how much they'll have to spend on offsetting and on actions as well. Hopefully when they budget the offsetting, they'll use that to offset to budget all the actions as well.
Is it a typical thing that gets worked into budgets for productions?
Not in the UK, I don't think it does now. I mean, if they plan to do actions from the beginning, if it's a returning series, for example, they'll probably budget it. They probably budget to use certain transport instead of another mode of transport, obviously.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, Lisa, we'll go to you first, then Mike will come to you next.
Mine's slightly different. So in terms of measurement, what's quite interesting, we've just done a piece of work within the advertising industry, looking at how you measure the carbon impact of the creative work that you're putting out in the world. So the flip side of sort of production, and looking at kind of, not only do you need to measure the carbon impact of the production, but you also need to measure the carbon impact of the creative work that you're making. So that's quite specific to advertising, but also kind of not really, because I guess, you know, what we do in creativity is we sell dreams and we influence lifestyles and behaviors and, you know, the way people kind of aspire to things and the way they live. So we've just launched it last week. It's called Eco-Effectiveness, and it's a tool where if you are working, for instance, on Audi and you win awards for a highly effective advertising campaign that sells a ton of new SUVs, then actually you should be accountable for the amount of kind of carbon, lifetime carbon of the SUVs you just sold through your advertising. So just throwing that into the mix, something we've sort of just put out in the world to shake things up a bit and kind of go, well, actually, what is our scope as people who make creative work?
Okay, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was having some trouble muting. Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the kind of the finance side and the budgeting. You know, I think that by and large, you know, by design, sustainable production practices save money. You know, just by reducing waste, you know, by reducing the amount of materials that you're using, or by recycling them versus landfilling them. That savings we would like to invest in maybe products and services that might be at a premium. There might be some products that are more expensive, but it's marginally more expensive. I think that it's something that's worth investing in, because once collectively we support an emerging market, then those prices come down when it's adopted more widely and it starts to scale up. So, I think that a line producer, it's challenging because they're looking to meet their budgets and they're looking at a comparable, what's the cost to rent this versus that. And sometimes there's a savings that comes down the line. If you rent an electric car, it might be more expensive per day to rent, but you're using less fuel. And so you might find some savings down the line depending on how it's used. So sometimes you need to look at it a little bit creatively, but it's an important conversation.
So I'm just going to plug my show again, because this week's episode is on electric vehicles and you will learn things you never knew about them. And I'll stop now. Our next question is from Elisa Costello. What film departments do you find are most active in your countries? And she says, in terms of sustainability, of course. What film departments do you find are most active in your countries? Anyone? Oh, Anna wants to take on that one.
I think obviously this is a relevant, it depends on every country, but I think that, at least in the case of LA, what I hope I get to see more is specifically work to be done on the screenwriting, creative department. As Lisa was saying, we are selling dreams, we're selling, behaviors. And sometimes, as to Peter's question, as an average producer, if we are a film student or if we are just starting up, we don't have a choice when it comes to sustainable, fancy choices, and we have to choose to do things, in a more cost-effective way. But that doesn't take our choice away from doing things better on another plane. Like, for example, if you're going to have a character and you're going to put your character with a plastic bottle in front of the camera, that doesn't cost you anything to think creatively about that and to think about the example that you're putting forth. And there is still a lot of work to be done in those little, simple little things, So I think that to the question of what film department, hopefully all of them, the clothing department has the choice of going to buy used clothes and buy them by weight, and that will be cheaper for the entire film production, and it will be better than buying new clothes that they can be reused. Same with EcoSet in Los Angeles, which is a fantastic resort that give away free production sets, reusable. And I know so many film students that are broke using their credit card to buy new fancy sets. I'm like, you can save some money and get some free recyclable sets. So there is a lot of room to find little actions to add up when these people move up the ladder and they become higher in their film department too.
Okay, thanks, Samuel. Anna, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I hope my internet's okay. I just had a message to say it's unstable, so let me know if it cuts out.
Sounds great.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to say, in all honesty, sadly, the kind of galvanization of the film departments is still at a very early stage. So I think people have a lot of interest in sustainability and kind of moving that into actual action and change. So the way that we work is still a very nascent thing. We work with an obsession on being brilliant at our jobs, and we have to work very quickly because that's what our jobs demand, that's what the projects demand. So kind of factoring in this extra thing, that's still at a very early stage. But what we have found is, we started as DOPs at Cut It, and we were quite quickly joined by costume, and now we're predominantly costume. So I would say costume are absolutely leading the way as far as I can see here, which has been really lovely. And one thing that I've really enjoyed about Cut It is suddenly working much more closely with all other departments than I would actually on a film set, where you're sort of in your own department more often than not. So yeah, I'd say costume, we're winning.
Okay, I saw Liesel with her hand up, and then Lisa, I think. So Liesel, go ahead.
We've got a format where we have a workshop with all the departments at the beginning of a production, and we've seen how that empowers them and how they then, those advocates then go back to their departments and they brainstorm with their teams, and they've actually come up with some brilliant ideas. And this is many different departments. We've seen it from costume, hair and makeup, special effects, unit, locations. We've seen people come from all areas. So I think it is also very much to do with how you engage and how you empower people. And again, it's important to have that high level buy-in on a production as well to actually set the tone.
Right. Okay, Lisa, I think you wanted to jump in on this. Am I right? No? Okay. All right, we will move on then. Andrea Bach, I'm hoping. Rosa, this is specifically for you, and it's about Albert. She said, I heard a rumor Albert is working on a calculator specifically for advertising. Right now, there isn't one with Albert nor with Green Production Guide. Any updates on that? I'm just going to read the rest of this. The ad industry needs help. While many partners exist like GreenSpark, EcoSet, Good Planet Green, CO2 Cycle, Earth Angels, and others to facilitate for us, nothing exists for us to self-guide.
I read that question. I was reading the Q&A. Yeah, we recently partnered with @Green, which is an organization really similar to Albert, but just for the advertising industry. And yes, we're planning to build a calculator for them when we finish the global calculator. Yeah, we kind of look, obviously we'll be able to measure similar things, but the way, I don't know anything about the advertising industry, and I'm learning so much by doing workshops with them to learn in order to build a calculator. The way how it looks is completely different. It's not more like commissioning than I produce. It's more like the brand. I think the brand goes to the agency. So it's many players in between. So the straight answer is yes, it will come. Hopefully during 2021, but we first need to finish our global one for the film and TV industry, and then we'll start working on it.
Okay, Andrea, I hope that helps you. The next question is anonymous, but it's an interesting question. Can low budget productions also be sustainable? Where can we improve working with less money? Veronika.
I'm gonna just talk about our work that we did in the youth film camps, and because it was very interesting that they are set in the countryside, and they live in camper wagons, and each team forms and makes a film, and they walk to their sets. They walk everywhere because they can't drive yet. They're still very young, yeah, there is one generator for the whole camp, and we kind of encourage that they think about not using it, and so they write their stories around their predicaments, and that maybe links a little bit to what Samuel was saying before, that it's sometimes that can create a chance as well for some interesting creative solutions. So I always say with low budget, sometimes don't make something great out of your limits, and choose the locations that are close to each other, that you don't need 10 cars to bring your crew to these locations, and use the daylight. The camera technical side, how I understood, is so great these days that sometimes you don't even need artificial light, that you maybe can use the daylight. There's so many solutions that can be tried that are just forgotten, and now with the new technology that we have are possible. So that would be my advice to low budget. Use what you have that's for free. There's so much that is for free.
Okay, two had their hand up. Sorry, I missed. Somebody was going. I thought someone did. Oh, Rose, go ahead.
Yeah, but really quick, I think it's backing up what Veronika said. I think from my experiencing of the numbers and seeing all the data we've been collecting the past few years, there is normally a correlation between lower budget productions and lower carbon footprints as well, because obviously those productions tend to be more creative, is what you mentioned. 50%, we saw that on our annual report, more on TV productions, but as well on the Green New Deal, 50% of our footprint is on travel. Normally when you have a low budget, you tend to travel probably less, you tend to go more for local crews. We've got, again, I invite everybody to read the Green New Deal, but We have a temple production of $70 million. Has a carbon footprint of around 2,840 tons of CO2. This is massive. You won't see that on low productions or low budget productions. So I think here is where we need to concentrate is on probably the large budget productions, on how we introduce innovation, how they are the productions that they actually can invest, not the productions, the companies, the studios in general, all the facilities. Exactly what Mike was saying about investing on innovation, and that's going to help big budget productions, and then probably these low budget productions are gonna be able to use all this technology as well.
Okay. Alyssa Costello asks, does anyone here work with production design or writers to create on-screen green content? Does anyone do that? Oh, Jose. And I'll come to
sorry.
Okay.
Because
you got all the answers.
no, because we have in our group we have two really clear goals. One is to completely eliminate the carbon footprint of waste, and the other one is to help content makers to create the strategies for a more sustainable living. This afternoon, I was just chairing a soap summit with all the soaps in the UK, where we do sessions like this, where we invited 4 experts, one in economy and sustainability, the one community sustainability, diversity, and they talk to them about topics that they can cover, how they can cover it. We have trainings as well. We have a tool called Planet Placement. And I mentioned before, we released a guide that was the first time that we did something like this, for directors, writers, actors, more for cast as well, and more for the artists, on what they could demand. Like maybe they're really sustainable at home, but then as soon as they go into set, maybe they don't even think about it. So kind of like to help them, guide them, like, what can you ask? Like, what can you ask to be added to your contract? So yeah, from Albert, we're focusing on this a lot this year as well.
Okay.
And
Mike?
I would like, oh, sorry.
Mike first, and then we'll go to Samuel. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think that the focus initially was always on the physical production and how we're going to reduce our footprint. But it's clear that we have an opportunity to message as well. And that's kind of a separate conversation that happens earlier during development. So making sure that we're providing writers and creators with the information to inspire them to include this kind of messaging and content in their production is really important. I'll also mention on the greenproductionguide.com, the Seed series, the first video talks a little bit about that and how we can collaborate with experts in the field of sustainability and those that really know what's going on around the world in terms of climate, and how we can kind of communicate some of that through our content, not just news and documentaries, but unscripted content as well, even unscripted.
Okay, Samuel.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention 2 things. One of them is a very exciting initiative because, for example, with the climate ambassadors, we're working with NYU to really implement that film students for the same reason that we were discussing before, of like including that as part of the guideline that we take for granted. And one of the things that, and I saw that on the chat as well, that someone here said that was an environmental film student, student or an environmentalist, and wanted to know how to get into the industry. There is so much advice and knowledge, and that's what I will also recommend to low budget production, to allocate some time to just have a conversation with someone from the scientist, sustainability field, someone that maybe doesn't have the creative output, but that knows, oh, this type of fabric versus this type of fabric, or this type of electricity versus this type of electricity, and just can educate you on simple little things that you can apply to the industry. And that also applies to content creation, of course, because if you, as a writer, learn about these people, learn about these stories, you can write about them and include them in your storytelling as well. And nowadays, when we see TV, we know so much about social justice issues because of the entertainment that we consume. And what about in 2030, when we have 20 million climate refugees? That's also going to have to do with the climate movement that we're building here. So it's all connected. And I think that reinventing the framework is very important to find big systemic solutions.
a different way of thinking about product placement, is thinking about placement of messages that need to get out. We are starting to come toward the end of things, I guess, but I just want to get this question in from Amelia Price. How would the panel suggest we get more cast and directors on board with sustainability? We often seem to focus on what the crew are doing and travel in general, but isn't it time we started asking above the line personnel to make a change and fly less? They have a huge influence on how a production is run. Who wants to tackle that? Somebody's got to. I know that there are actors out there who are greatly concerned about the environment, so I'm assuming they influence their productions. Rosa, you start us off.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're trying to help them, as we're learning about them as well, like about how to help them with the Green Rider. And I think it's what I mentioned at the beginning, it's about having the management, the senior management of a company involved as well, which is about making those decisions. Like for lots of years, we've been talking to production managers all the time, and they've been doing a great job. But then it's about there's something that they cannot do anymore. You know, there is a limit that they can do. And if you put that as the core of your company, then I think you can actually start talking to your cast, to your directors. You can start having these big conversations. But for this, you need, I'm having meetings with CEOs from all the companies from Fremantle now. We've never had that. To be able to talk to a CEO, explain, we are Albert, we do that, and then that people embeds it, and you just know it's just going to go down the company, and it's going to be involved by everybody. So I really, really insist we need to take this seriously from the top as well, because at the bottom, lots of people is doing a lot already, I think.
I know we sort of touched on this already, but do actors, I know actors take direction, but do actors take direction on questions like these? Are they willing to step up and set an example for the rest of the crew? Veronika?
I can't say on film projects, but recently, like during the Berlin Film Festival, there was also a panel on green filmmaking, and it was fronted by an actor actually who introduced the panel and made a great speech, and really was an example in that field, that he suggested, why do we drive in our limousines from the hotel to the 10 meters cinema that's only 10 meters apart? And that he said he would walk next time. So even in our Filmmaker for Future core team, there's an actor. So they are out there and they're definitely interested. And I'm sure they just need to be given a voice and asked. I'm sure they have something to say. Like I said before, it's just sometimes there's not the platform yet.
Okay, Anna, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Someone told me about a British drama production that's filming in Prague, I think it was, and there's a group of young actors just refused to fly, and they would get the train. It was 11 hours or something, and I thought that was pretty commendable. And I imagine when change happens among the actors, it will probably happen among the young actors first. And like everything else, we need sort of cultural change to happen where we stop thinking that, you know, because we save, I mean, I'm not talking about going to Prague, but perhaps flying London to Edinburgh, you might save about half an hour versus getting the train, all things factored in. So yeah, we need the cultural change to happen first.
Okay, I've got time for one more answer on this question. Liesel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just briefly, I think there are many icons out there, or sort of cultural icons for sustainability among the acting fraternity. And I think in terms of when you're on a production, I think it would be wonderful to just have the opportunity to put it to them. No pressure. I think they're all, you know, they're all culturally aware, so many of them, and they have such power. Yeah. So maybe it's just about giving them the opportunity.
Okay. All right. Thanks for all of the questions. We still have several of them open, but I don't think we're going to be able to get to them in this discussion. I do want to go around here and ask everybody to answer this question somewhat briefly. I want each of you to give me either your call to action or one takeaway from our panel discussion. So Mike, let's start with you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. This has been a really amazing conversation, getting a chance to speak with so many people from around the world and learn about what you're doing respectively in your areas. My call to action is just continue this conversation. You know, we really, we can work together to accelerate change and really bring, you know, a systemic long-term solution for our industry. And thank you again for having me today.
Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so fascinating, actually. I think the key thing for me is probably around kind of, well, sort of two things, but very briefly is kind of thinking about what's on screen as well as what's behind the camera and kind of the influence that that has on our kind of footprint. And then also measurement, which comes through really strongly in terms of what everybody is saying. You can't kind of change what you don't measure. So just making sure we have, you know, really clear kind of measurements that go across industries that everybody can use and buy into.
Okay, Rosa.
I would say, yeah, collaboration, I think, in terms of creating a better infrastructure and better opportunities for the whole industry. Take action and take action now, just do it, even if, again, like, just take as many steps as you can, even if they are small. And something that I kind of knew, but kind of like highlighted on me on this panel is like, listen to young generations, because I feel they know much more than us. I feel they don't have these tics. I don't know if you would say tics of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take a flight because it's easy. You know, it's like they have this fresh mind that they can really create that cultural change that I think everybody has mentioned at some point. So just let's listen to them, because probably they know more than we do in this.
All right, in that spirit, over to you, Samuel.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you, everyone. I think that, you know, there is so much work to do that it can feel extremely overwhelming. I'm sure a lot of people are going to end this panel, they're going to close the computer and they're going to be like, what, where do I even begin? And I think that one of the things that I try to remind myself every day is that we do not, each one of us have to do everything. That's not what we are discussing here. What we're discussing is, let's each one of us identify what our superpowers are, what we can do that is unique to the situation that we are in, and be conscious about our choices. And then very importantly, because we cannot do everything and we rely on other people doing other things, let's communicate those, let's amplify, and let's create structures that are not self-serving, but that they are mutual aid based, that they, you know, as Mike was saying before, in an industry where everyone is going to benefit if they bring down the cost of production, why will have the studios compete to figure out who becomes the most sustainable? They don't. They can work together, and like working together for who is going to do the best film. They cannot work together on that. Let them compete on that field. But when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to, you know, making sure that our sets are safe from sexual harassment, safe from racial injustice, that's the same. That's the same type of cultural change right there in those three. And if we're going to have to do them, let's do them together. Let's not have to, like, you know, because there is so many connections in all of these different fields. Like, we really need to, like, hear each other's ideas and believe that they're not telling them to us because they want to sell us something, but because they want to improve something about the workflow we do.
Just Samuel, just so you know, someone's written in the chat, we need more Samuels. So you touched a nerve here. Congratulations. Anna, it's your turn. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think everybody either working on production or working you know, in production companies or working in affiliated organizations, we all can do something. Even, you know, a costume trainee can do something, and as human beings we're extremely conformist, and sometimes it can be very difficult to express that you're taking a particular measure because you're thinking about the environment, or that you're concerned about a particular thing that you're doing as a group. because of its impact on the environment. It can actually be very difficult to express these worries and concerns within a group of individuals who you don't know their leanings and their understanding how much they care about these things. So I guess my call would be a sort of emotional engagement with your, kind of try to align your real feelings with your professional life. Try to voice those concerns when you can, because what we need to do is change the culture and sort of bring that conformity, use conformity by kind of calling attention to the environment and all the actions we take, so that other people start to go, this is a normal thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And Liesl, to you.
I think it's so encouraging to see how much is already being done and how the momentum is picking up. But at the same time, there is still so much to be done. And I think it's important to bear in mind that everybody has a role to play. So every initiative, every tool, every collaboration, it all helps move us forward. So be open to those and participate. And then I think a lot happens between good intentions and real proven impact. So let's aim for accountable implementation, and let's really connect the dots between policy and practice and people.
All right, and we will end with Veronika, who I think began by saying you were wanting to do more listening here. You felt you had a lot to learn. So what are you taking away from the discussion today?
Yeah, I feel very humbled by this panel, who seems to be so experienced and also already have done so much in this area. I feel very much as a beginner, but I very much agree with Samuel. The Filmmakers for Future also have in their statement the connection between the care for the environment is just as important as the care for each other, the call for diversity in the industry, and to look after each other as a society. It's all connected. And my final statement would be also to be brave, to start with as little steps that you can make, but every step builds.
Right. That's an inspiration to all of us. I thank all of you. It's been a really interesting discussion and very smooth technically, which I'm also very grateful for. That's all the time we have for the discussion. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to hand it over to Randy Cruz now from SIM International, which is the presenting partner of the 2020 Sustainable Production Forum. Hi, Randy.
Hi, Laura. And it's truly an honor to meet CBC legend, Laura Lynch. So congratulations on hosting such an inspiring panel. And I agree, the technology was smooth. I really enjoyed all of the panelists' contributions and participant additions through the chat box and the questions. Really, thank you all. I feel like everybody has already said what I was going to say related to, influencing cultural change and pushing for systemic change wherever and as often as we can. So I would just pick up on something Samuel said, which is find your superpower and really run with that. And at SIM, our superpower is introducing clean energy solutions that make diesel generators a thing of the past. And today we are just over the moon thrilled to be doubling our fleet in Vancouver. Thanks to the studio partners who've really helped us to refine and improve this technology from when we first launched a year ago. Mike Slavich is one of those heroes who helped us with this. So I just really encourage everybody to continue innovating and focus on influencing change in whatever aspect of the industry you can. And I hope that you will all continue to participate in the Sustainable Production Forum events. The next one is next week on it's on Sunday, actually. It's on the 25th. So, and then next week on the 28th. So thank you to everybody. It's truly an honor to continue to be part of these events.
Bravo.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.